The time is now 6:30. I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. Before we get started, we're going to have Councilwoman Spruill lead us in prayer, and I ask everyone please stand for the pledge. All right, once again, thank you all for being here tonight. We're going to go ahead and get started. All right, our first item on the agenda tonight is to consider approval of minutes for the July 18th, 2023 regular session. Council, if we had a chance to review, and the floor will be open for a motion.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion made by Councilwoman Spruill, second by Councilman Chappelle. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 The vote is unanimous. We'll now close that item on the agenda. Our next item is public comments. At this time, if we have anyone in the audience that would like to address the council, please do so at this time. State your name and address for the council. Okay, moving right along, we'll go ahead and close that item. Since we have no speakers, we'll go ahead to item 3. Item 3 is a presentation by Holmes Murphy to discuss employee benefit offerings for the 2023-2024 plan year.
Perla.
Mayor, Council, Mr. Thatcher, I'd like to introduce the Metro Reynolds. He is with the Holmes Murphy, and Ms. Reynolds will do the presentation for our employee benefits for this year.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Honorable Council members. Mr. Thatcher, it's a pleasure to be here. Nice to see you again. My, how the time flies. Here we are again. That's something. We're in August. The year's almost over. It's unreal. The older I get, the faster it goes. Yeah, so we just are pleased to be here. Thank you for having us. We wanted to kind of give you an update on our working through our renewal this year, our focusing specifically really on our health insurance. That's always, everyone's top of mind this time of year, like how much is our health insurance going to go up? How much is it going to cost us? Before I get into that too much, I will tell you last year, poor Perla, we marketed every single line of coverage that you all have last year. That was your dental, your vision, your life, your long-term disability, short-term disability, several different lines. We were able to secure rate guarantees for 2 years, so we were fortunate. This year, we focused primarily on the medical. Of course, we're with Blue Cross, like I said earlier, and the initial feedback that we were getting was that we have 3 very large claimants that kind of shown up right as renewal was going to be calculated and come to us. We were thinking the renewal might be around 20%. Blue Cross's initial offer was 9% increase with no plan changes. We were able to negotiate that down to a 6, keep the same plan that we have. So what that meant to the city was $104,955 difference from what you're currently paying with no plan changes. We did work through the way that the tier structure is set up currently with Blue Cross. There's 2 tiers. There's employee, and what they give us is just employee and employee family. And so we had broken out. We had four tiers, like employee, employee spouse, employee children, employee family. And so this year, the family contribution will go up $100, but everything else will remain unchanged. Any questions? I wish I had a lot to tell you, but oh yes. So the employee deductible and out of pocket is the same on your plan because it's a 100% plan. So currently it's $750 for an individual, and Blue Cross pays or the city picks up 100% of anything after that through the health reimbursement arrangement. So we recommended that the city make that $1,000 instead of the $750. So for an individual pay the first $1,000. The city will pick up the remainder through the health reimbursement arrangement. For family, it's $2,000. Yes, sir.
Hey, 2 questions. What is the standard deductible, not deductible, but copay? And then I noticed over here in the renewal column, does it matter that you got the health reimbursement arrangement and the ACA reporting, they renew in January versus October? Does that matter? Does that make a difference?
What we were referencing on the renewal were that the plan renews on 10/1. But the deductible resets January 1, 2024. So the deductible changes will go into effect 1/1. The ACA reporting is required under the Affordable Care Act. Oh, I'm so sorry. So the plan has no copays. It's just a 100% plan. It's actually health insurance that we used to have back in the day before copays became a thing. I hate to say it, I'm dating myself, but when I very first went into the insurance industry in the late 80s, there were no such things as copays at that time. Copays came into effect about 89 or 90, I guess is when they got here. Prior to that, deductibles, it was always deductible, co-insurance, and out-of-pocket. That's what this plan is. It is a deductible, and then the co-insurance is 100%.
Do you know, I'm looking at your marketing results recommendations page, your summary, just for real numbers, with a 6% increase, that's what you negotiated after you had to change the deductible or adjust that a little bit, where the individual will be out $1,000 or to $2,000 for a family? And so what is that? What's the $60,380.58 at the bottom? Is that our monthly premiums for the city? What is that?
Yeah, so let me be more specific. So as far as Blue Cross Blue Shield is concerned, the policy that we buy from them is a $5,000 100% plan. And what we've done within the city is put in a health reimbursement arrangement, which the city self-funds their deductible. That's what you're thinking about and talking about. And so the actual numbers, and I did bring them with me, currently the annual overall cost is $1,750,000. Overall, it's going to $1,000,085. The city cost is 1.59, and the employee cost is 276,000. Yes, ma'am.
Just wanted to say, I remember 4 years ago when it first came, we had the insurance similar to what we've got, but the employee had to pay $5,000 deductible for him or her, and their spouse and family had to pay another $5,000, so it was $10,000 if they had a family. And so a lot of our employees weren't even using it, and a lot of them wouldn't buy it for their family because they could never pay that much. And you all recognized that. In fact, brought it to my attention. I remember you had a big, and said we need to work on this and do better. So I was reminded tonight, I thought about that as we were talking about it in there, and Galen mentioned, he said, well, that's what we wanted. We were talking about how good the plan was for the employees, and it really is good now. And Galen said, well, that's what we told you all to do 3 or 4 years ago. Let's get it down. Several years ago, and I'm thinking maybe 20 or 30 years ago, I was in a Texas Municipal League conference, and I was in a session on health insurance. And there was a young lady that was, and I'm talking young, old as my kids at the time, maybe 20 years old, 25 years old. And she was talking about the insurance, and she said, the health insurance is going up sky high, and we got to think of creative ways the city can provide insurance and not cost them so much money. And then she made this statement. She said, we need to get back to what insurance was really meant for when it was created 100 years ago or 50 years ago, whatever. And she said it was created for just those large catastrophic kind of claims. It wasn't meant to cover everybody's cold or this or that. And I sat there a minute and I thought, now I'm a lot older than her. And I remember the day when it did cover everything. It's only been every year it's getting worse. Higher premiums, less coverage. In my whole career, it just seems to be getting worse. And so it's like a war when it comes to health insurance. And we had somebody helping us, a third-party administrator or a consultant helping us. But it really was Holmes Murphy and Demetra that came, sat down, and gave us some ideas. I remember going back to the other consultant we had, and I said, have you ever heard of this where you self-insure your deductible? Not the whole plan, but the deductible. I've never heard of that before. And they go, yeah, we can do that. And I thought, well, we've been with you for how many years? You've never mentioned it to us, you know. But Demetra and her crew came and told us how we could do this, and so it's been a good relationship, and they've showed us how to do a lot of things that it's been good for the employees, and I do appreciate it, and I do appreciate the council that supported us along the way here. So as Forrest Gump would say, that's all I got to say about that.
Demetria, just for, is there any prescription coverage in this plan? I don't recall.
The prescriptions count toward the deductible.
So once you meet your deductible, then the prescriptions are covered also.
The prescriptions count toward the deductible, and then once the deductible is met, they're paid at 100%. Yeah, I personally have a plan very similar to this. My youngest son has MS, so we meet our deductible and out of pocket every January because his MS medication is so expensive. But I don't have a health reimbursement arrangement that is this rich. You know, I have to pay the full amount.
All right, council, we have any further questions? All right, Demetria, we certainly appreciate that, and we want to thank you for all the hard work you guys put in, the effort to take care of our citizens here that work with the city. I'm sure they appreciate that insurance a lot better than what they had before, so I really want to thank you.
Mayor and council, this is a presentation tonight. Unless you instruct us to do anything different, this will be included in the budget document in a few months or in a few weeks that you'll be asked to approve, and it'll be approved this way in the budget. Again, you have opportunity to tell us to change it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, we'll now close that item on the agenda and move on to item 4. Item 4 is a presentation by Schneider Electric to discuss our water meters.
Mayor and council, I'd like to introduce Dave Howerton to introduce Greg Messenbrink. And if you remember, we hired plumber engineers to look at our LBS plant to get it from 2.5 million gallons to 5 million gallons. And so he's entered into a relationship with Schneider Electric, which is Greg. And but why don't you come up and introduce him? And you guys have met him before, another thing, but I want Dave to kind of touch and tell him what we're doing tonight.
Thank you very much, Ed. I just want to say that we are joining together and have brought this recommendation to Mount Pleasant for our team with Plummer to join with Schneider Electric because of the services they provide. We do regular, most of our work is design, bid, build, very conventionally offered. And when we saw some of the needs through some of the working with Ed and Anthony, we saw that it was a perfect fit to join with Schneider, and we brought them forward and recommend them to the city wholeheartedly on this project to move forward in evaluation to save money through performance inefficiencies, optimize performance, and to work on saving electricity through better equipment. And the good thing about these guys is they are really good at what they do, and what they're going to bring are the financials associated with the improvements that are being recommended. And at the ultimate result of their work will be a guarantee of the savings that you'll get by the construction that's recommended. So tonight Craig is going to talk about the project that's being agreed to to start. And actually they may have already started some of the preliminaries over the next few months, and then he'll be back to before you in October, for sure by November, with the results of their very detailed analysis. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to Craig Messenbrink with Schneider Electric.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, Council, Mr. Thatcher. My name is Craig Messenbrink with Schneider Electric. I'm here with a few co-workers. We have Ryan Wonder, our development engineer, and a couple of our business development folks there in the back tagging along. But Grace and Miranda, yes. They're not from here. We did make that clear earlier, didn't we? But anyway, hopefully everybody has a copy of this little report in front of them, and this is really, there's no action tonight. This is just an update and discussion. But this business case analysis was the very first step, as requested by the city manager, to talk about what are the next steps related to the raw water pumping improvements and upgrades, as well as the retail water meters throughout the city. And so these are the two primary subjects. One of the reasons is, as David with Plummer indicated, that we have a funding mechanism where the savings and or the revenue through our contract is guaranteed. And so as you are putting the money forth for the project, we can talk about cash flows and ways that money can be recovered. And if we don't, if the results, we come back annually and look at that, and if the results do not meet the expectations that we guaranteed, then we write a check for the difference. And so this makes hopefully the financial considerations more palatable. In this report, you'll see basically three major parts or topics. One is just a project overview of the two items that I identified, the raw water pumping and the water meter upgrades. And then you'll see the preliminary financial analysis relative to both the revenue and the potential energy savings on one side with the raw water pumping, these pumps, and they're pictured on that front page, 300 horsepower and such, are not currently operating, and the Plummer folks have been analyzing this for a while to their in their optimum spot. And so by changing that equipment, there can be $50,000 to $100,000 in energy savings or more. We're in the process of nailing that down exactly, in annual energy savings for just that one area of raw water pumping. And then on the water meter side, we're just getting the information from the city. It's somewhere between 6,400 and 6,800 meters. More than half of the city's consumption comes from the commercial users, and you guys know who the big two are already. But the theme there with the water meters is that the traditional water meter that's in place is an old impeller mechanical style meter. It has slippage, it sticks over time, and there are losses. And so our scope, very simply put, is to change these out with modern technology. Sonic meters have no moving parts and have a 20-year warranty with a much higher degree of accuracy. And so the intent is simply to measure the water that's delivered to the customers, commercial and retail both, but commercial retail for the most part, is to measure that output accurately. And if you flip to page 5 in that report, you'll see a preliminary timeline that we put together. We've already done some workshopping earlier this year. This business case report started with a total sweep of all the city services, including parks and rec, lighting, the buildings, because we also look at energy efficiency related to HVAC systems or lighting systems, the temperature controls and whatnot. At the recommendation of the city manager, we honed this down to just those two big areas, the raw water pumping and the water meters. And so we've begun an investment grade audit. That's the term IGA. We've just started that in the last few weeks to gather and detail the information on both the analysis from Plummer related to the pumping, and then get information on the 6,500 or so water meters. We're also going to be pulling about 100 of those meters to physically do testing so that we can benchmark or bench test the meters themselves and get a very accurate, a more accurate rendering of what that slippage is, so that we can make those estimates for both revenue and or energy savings. At the end of that process, our objective, we have both a midterm and a final report that will come and deliver to staff. It'll be up to staff whether I'm back in front of you before October, but the idea is that at the end, we come back with this investment grade audit and a construction contract to do this work. There are details in the part 2 sections, pages 5 through 9, detail the 2 projects. I can take any questions that you have. Just by way of mentioning here, we had a little workshop earlier with Ms. Burial and Mr. Adams to talk in more detail, where they had a chance to throw. I got to pull the darts out. So, yep.
On the technology side, that's kind of my house that I like to deal with. How do these meters communicate back to the city, or just if you can explain that, and are they able to see the meters in real time and get notifications via some type of push notification or email, however the city decides to set up those type of alerts?
And that's really one of the keys here in this process is the current system. If I describe the meters and how they're read or how that comes about as sort of a low, medium, and high kind of setup. You're at the medium step. It's called AMR. This was done back around 2010, where most of the meter heads were replaced with a device where if somebody was in a truck, they could come by and it would use a proximity system to take a reading. Now, a lot of those batteries, after 10 to 15 years, are starting to go dead. They've had to convert. The city is now reading about 1,500 of the meters manually every month, just in order to get that data. The new system is called AMI, and so all of those new meters, not only the new physical body, but the new head, will report digitally up through a cell tower, and then that will come as often as prescribed. So that can be every hour, that can be 4 times a day, that can be daily. We were talking about that earlier. You know, the more you report, sometimes the weakens, it shortens the battery life, and so we will present a matrix of what that looks like. The benefit to the end user is, and I think Ms. Spurriel had a great example of her mom, where if you have a leak, this system could notify you automatically within 24 hours of said leak. And you don't have to wait till the meter's read at the end of the month and find out you have a $900 bill, right, because you had this leak. It also enables the city to tons of information to come in related to the city and where that water is used and when. And so the digital aspects of that data collection are going to be tenfold what you have currently.
So with that said, you said it uses wireless back to the cell towers. Is this using the new 5G technology? Because 4G is, soon to be looked at the sunset. And so moving forward, we need to be considering to make sure that this equipment is designed to work with the latest and greatest technology. And with that said, you mentioned about batteries. Are these new meters set up to where they can replace the batteries?
I'll let our development engineer, Ryan Wonder, answer that.
So the answer to both those questions depends on the manufacturer. And on the front of this page here, page 8, or the front of the document, you can see 5 different pictures. So it depends on those different options. Some of these manufacturers, they use cell towers. Each meter would have its own cellular radio. And some of these meter manufacturers prefer what we call a fixed base system, where there's a singular antenna collector at each of the water towers. And so they're not cellular, they have their own prescribed radio frequencies. So it kind of depends on the manufacturer. We haven't got that specific yet, but I would say there are a lot of common traits between these different products. And what we do is, during this IGA, we create a matrix to show the different pros and cons of each meter, and present that back to the city to help make a decision. And of course, price is one of those things as well. But the different radio technologies, the warranties, the minimum flow rates for the meters, these are all very important things. The number of data points that can be stored in case of a, like you might have an RV parked on top of the radio where it can't read. And so how many days can it store that data before it overwrites? Some of these can go for 100 days. Some of them go for a year and a half. And so we present all that back to the city to make a decision.
So I could see on the cellular side, you'd have to consider, in order for that device, in this case the water meter, to work, you'd have to establish an account with that wireless provider, because that would be like another phone line or whatever. So it would make more sense to have that meter talk back to the city's water towers or other type of structures within the city to be able to communicate with those water meters, so you can collect it without having to pay those additional monthly fees to your cellular provider. Because basically that would be like, I don't know if you're familiar with IoT or Internet of Things. That's basically what this is in a sense. And so I would think it would be in best interest for us to look maybe towards the fixed band that you're talking about, going back towards the city's assets, so we don't have to rely on someone like Verizon or AT&T to be up and working in order for us to be able to monitor our own meters.
And that's a great point. I mean, we're dealing with that with customers right now where 3G is getting completely phased out, and so they have older radio systems where that's a problem, and they have to do something. In general, I think I like the fixed base systems. It's more traditional, and a big part of it will be not just the cost of the meters, but the recurring costs for the data. And so that's another thing, that each of these manufacturers will have a different cost there, and we'll present all those to the city. And of course, a lower number there is very important. And generally speaking, the cellular numbers are a little higher because it's charged per month per account. And so I just haven't seen one of those come in low.
And I was going to say, each one of those meters would be an account, because it don't matter if it's Verizon, AT&T, they're going to treat that meter just like an individual cell phone number. And like you said, with the data, however much data would be tallied up over the month, you have to pay that if you go over your data plan. So I'm agreeing with you. I like the fixed base station, method or, design, because you have control of that, or the city has control of that. Whereas if it's on the cellular side, if they have a network outage or a fiber, you're at their mercy. There's nothing we can do, and we're down as a city until they resolve their network issues.
I would agree. I mean, it's very much pros and cons for each one, but I like the fixed base, and ultimately the cost is pretty compelling. So we'll have that information for the city over the course of the next few months.
And one last, do you already know though if there's a cost difference in the meter? You know, one that's a fixed base type radio versus one that's a cellular type setup?
I'll say that all of these are very comparable, but that recurring cost, that yearly cost, is where you're going to see the difference.
I forgot to mention to you, Greg and Ryan, that we have a guy named Henry that has expertise in this, and so he will assist us. We'll ask him to meet with us to help us decide which one we want to recommend to the council. He'll be very much involved, whether we ask him to or not, by the way.
Guys, is there, anyway, could you take just a second and explain, the EPA regulations that are coming up on reporting and how this assists us, how even we're gonna have to do something similar to this anyway, so explain to us what y'all will do to help us with that.
So the EPA is requiring all utilities by October of 2024 to document their service lines, the material composition of the service lines on both sides of the meters. And so that's a pretty daunting task to go to 6,500 locations, and a lot of these meters have to be dug up because they're basically buried underneath just the registers sticking out. So you don't really have access to the service lines on each side. Well, as part of the meter project, we're going to be doing that anyway. They're going to be dug up, but we'll have easy access. So we'll create that service line inventory for the city as part of this project. And the goal there is to document what those materials are. You know, is it plastic? Is it galvanized steel? Is it lead? What is that? We know that with Mount Pleasant, there's not a lot of lead, but anything that's unknown is assumed to be lead. So this project will go document all that, and that's what's required by the EPA, and I think this project will address that directly.
Another question I have about the meters, when we do go through the process to change them out, is there any program or process in place to recover any cost on the old meters? Is there any type of recycle program or repurpose or reuse them somewhere else to resell them? I don't know, but I just want to know if there's any way we can recoup any of that cost. 6,500 meters, that's a lot of meters, so there should be some kind of cost there we could recover.
That subject definitely came up earlier, and the direct answer is yes. The way we've structured this and the way we'd structure this going in is that you own those assets post-project. So it would be completely up to you if you want to work with us to try to find a reseller or buyer, to secondhand. I know there was a comment made about somebody taking the meters and saying, well, we could sell a batch to Mexico or third world country or something that they have value, maybe up to $50 a piece. But that's generally not something that we manage, and so, but we can. But to answer your question directly, those become your assets, and whether you're selling them for junk or selling them for resale is completely up to you. They're your assets.
Let me just say also, I should have done this at the beginning, but it really helps to understand when you look at the LBS water plant, the project that we had. We estimated, David and his firm estimated it'd be about $4 million and change to do the upgrade on that plant. And normally what they do is they write the specification, go out to bid, to get the work done and so forth. But what they did is this innovative thing with Snyder is to work out a design build program where they design it and Snyder comes in and does the construction and building, and in that builds in the energy savings for the pumps and whatever. So a project that, when it's completed, is going to be saving money and help pay that back over the life. So when we told you it was about $4 million or $5 million to redo the plant, it's still going to do that, but that's all one cost. Whatever it is, that's built into that cost. So we're not looking for a big increase to have Snyder do that. They're just going to come in and put some energy savings in that same cost. And working with Plummer, and then the water meter thing we asked them to do because we're ready to do it anyway. So we asked them to do that.
One other thing I thought about, when you do go and start the construction, and this is just a hypothetical right now, but you go to a location and you start digging back to expose the meter to change it out, and you discover it's old lead pipe or whatever, how far back are you going to go to change it out to get it compliant and get rid of that old lead pipe or clay pipe or whatever kind of pipe it might be?
A good question, and the answer is nothing. So the reporting, the EPA is requiring the report be done by October 24th. So we're going to be changing the meter body and then identifying whether it's the lead in this case, right, or not lead. But we're not going to be changing that lead pipe. That would be a different project for another day. But right now, with 6,500 opportunities, we're hoping and planning that would be a lot less, maybe 10, 20%. But then that has to be tackled separately. This first will be identification only.
But when you go to physically change those out, there's probably going to be some scenarios where you go in there and you try to break loose the meter and you disturb the old pipe and it crumbles or falls apart. So you have to address it then as well. So I'm sure you're going to factor in a percentage of that type of cost.
We do. We generally accept 1 foot on each side of the meter because there are issues, of course. And, we'll be working with the city the entire time because there's going to be areas that we can't find shut-off valves for, and there'll be all kinds of complications. There'll be areas where more needs to be done. But in general, 1 foot on each side is what we target.
We have a couple of tests that we do. TCEQ requires us to do, and one of them is a lead sampling of water, see how much lead we have in the water, and we have like less than 1%. So we don't have much. So we're not anticipating finding a lot of lead. But this this is a federal program that the Congress passed and said all the cities have to have this report in by next year, 2024, October. And so we'll do that. We anticipate then we'll have to come back with a plan to replace those lines on both sides, all the way to the house, kind of thing. And so, but that'll be for when we get that report done.
I just, this is just kind of a note to the public and a note to my fellow council members. Change is gonna happen, and if we don't make the change now, I mean, we're in a position right now where we've got to make a report anyway, and if we don't make the change and upgrade to today's standard, then what you've done technically is you've left the city at a disadvantage. And you know what, when we all come into this, I mean, we have upgraded so many things in the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, all of us have been, there's so many things, we're so far behind. And if we don't take a look at what we've done up till now to help make this decision, we're sliding ourselves, because we can't stay in the same place. Things are changing, and so we've got to make those changes. And if you remember, a lot of these changes, we've been able to make them with minimal to no tax increase. I mean, we have held the line on taxes so hard. I mean, Ed sweats every year when he tries to do the budget, because so we can do this and make it work out, and make a better situation, put a better product out for our customers, which are citizens of this city. And if you talk to these guys for a minute, this isn't all they do. I mean, they do other things too. They go through and renovate your lights, and they renovate. I mean, these guys are in the business of upgrading to today's standard, and honestly, this is something that we need to do, but I think we need to keep a relationship with these guys, and we need to go forward and go through it. Every time you make the change, you're gonna save yourself some money. And so it's a cost up front, but you're gonna have to make that cost at some point anyway. So you might as well make it now, and then let our children and their children live in a better situation than we're doing right now, and not have to feel the pains that we're feeling right now to catch up, because we were so far behind because nobody took time to look at it.
All right, I totally agree with you there, Councilman. I just wanted to go with some of the impacts out of your flyer here, which I said, one thing is, the annual savings, you know, I was looking here and we're looking at about 100,000 per year savings. After that $4 million cost, for that amount of savings a year, I think it's beneficial to us. And also the, you know, it's, like I said, we got more efficient pump with less energy use, right sizing pumps, removing restrictions and improving flows, which we were trying to get that capacity that which we asked. So I think it's heading in the right direction. Like I said, just kind of want to piggyback on what Councilman Adams was saying. I think it's something that the city needs to improve also.
I was a part of the meeting today, and I asked them, so have information that they can share with us as about grants and things to help us along the way. They're up to date on that. They know what's available, and that's also a help. I mean, the grants, you know, and I mean, you gotta apply for it, but you have to know what's out there to even make application, and that's a benefit that they, I guess, would share with us on a regular basis to help us with these things. And also, I agree with Councilman Adams. There's a point that you just have to jump in and upgrade. We've been about that. I know since I've been on the council 4 years, and when Ed came in, we started, one of the first things we asked Mr. Thatcher to do when he became our city manager was to review our city, review forensically, a forensic scrub of infrastructure, the things that people take for granted every day, turning on the water, taking a shower and washing clothes, and, you know, the bathroom things that we do. And I'm grateful for that. I mean, I grew up with a grandmother, around a grandmother that would wash dishes by hand at the kitchen sink. She didn't have a dishwasher, but she would sit there and say, "Thank you, Lord, for this running water that I'm washing these dishes." Of course, we've come a long way since then. But she was so grateful she didn't have to go to the well or the frozen pond. She got bit by a snake one day trying to get a bucket of water out of the pond when she was a young girl, she was telling me. And just so the things we take for granted, but there's maintenance, there's cost, there's future, and then there's the expense of delivering the water. And that's, someone asked me the other day, Sherry, tell me about your time on the city council. Someone that from my past, an old friend, here you're on the city council. Yes, said, tell me what's been the most meaningful to you? I thought that's a good question. Of course, you know I love to argue. Everybody that knows me just knows how I love that. But the most meaningful thing, and I want to share because we're on that tonight, of all the things that I took for granted as a citizen, and I've always been an aware type of person. I'm not, you know, I kind of stick my nose in other people's business sometimes. Shut up. But the most meaningful thing that I've come to know is how complicated it is to have water and sewer in this modern age, not just to get it to us, but the regulations, the TCEQ, the EPA, just like this new, go look at your water lines. Is there any lead? Tell us what you got. And if you don't do it, we're gonna penalize you as if you've got lead. We're gonna assume there's lead till you prove just the opposite of what we're used to, right? You're innocent until proven guilty. It's just the opposite, because they're after trying to make us healthier. But but to get back to my point, how incredibly involved and how, I mean, that's why I was picking on you guys. Engineer. There's an engineer. How many more engineers do we have in here tonight? How many engineers does it take to change a light bulb? You know the old Aggie joke. So I appreciate what the city and the council and Ed and the mayor and all of us, we have been laser focused. We may not get it all right. Nobody knows the future. I'm listening that 10 years ago, where's old Patch, Captain Patch? Did he leave, Anthony? He's wearing a patch on his eye. That 12, 15 years ago, we put the new upgrades, and I think he told me how many millions that cost then. It never stops, and this won't be the last time in the future of Mount Pleasant that they have to make another water something upgrade. But you're right, Galen, we have to jump in. We have to look ahead. Energy is increasing cost. There is no telling where electricity is gonna go in expense in the next 5 years and beyond that. I don't think we are prepared for what we're about to pay for electricity. So I appreciate the effort. I appreciate the hours that the council, like Galen and I came today and spent an hour with you guys ahead of time. Not because we can only meet 2 at a time unless it's a call meeting, so that we could ask a few more questions to get you guys ready to come make the rest of the council a more comprehensive presentation, so that we could get something that we can all do. But this water and sewer stuff, and we're spending $40 million, round numbers, on a sewer upgrade, right? We're spending $4 million on the LBS, and then maybe another $4 million. It don't come in a few bucks. It's millions of dollars, and it's a tough decision sitting in my seat to vote for any of this. Okay, I'm sorry, it's expensive. I don't care how small a bite's, or but it's hard. But I think we're going to have to do it. I think we'll be derelict in our duties if we don't. And I'm as tight a wad as anybody sitting on this council.
I just wanted to add a point, whether the press is here or not. Lead and copper was mentioned tonight. That's the boogeyman. We also, you talked about health insurance. This is a national mandate, probably resulting from everything that happened in Flint, Michigan. But Anthony was in the meeting today, and I think it's worth noting. I asked him how many times he'd come across a lead lines in 20 plus years here. Him or his guys, boots on the ground. They've never come across a lead line. So that's worth something. In the purpose of this program is to check at every house. We have the data where we check the system, but this is individual. This goes to each house, and it costs a few $1 million, a couple $1 million. I think we spitballed it that it costs just to do the inventory of those lines. So it's a mandate from the federal government, but it has value.
Okay, council, we have any further questions?
I would like to mention one other thing. So as the meters we have in the ground right now, we discussed that some of the savings will be gathered through what we'd call slippage. They're motor mechanisms, and these ones we're putting in are not motor mechanisms. And so we asked the question of what do we think the slippage is on current meters. So and they do have an answer for that, and I'm gonna let them answer that.
So that changes as the meters get larger. We were talking in that 2 to 8% range on the residential, on the small side. On the commercial side, it gets larger. And so really that was one of the focal points that the city manager brought up in the beginning. And that we're not trying to slight or aim at any group. We're just trying to measure accurately, right? We just want an accurate measurement. But that slippage could be higher on the 3-inch, 4-inch meters on the large commercial meters than it would be on the retail small end.
And of course, our concern in the meeting, me and Sherry were sitting in, that was our concern is what would a normal homeowner, if we had their meter in place for 40 years, what can they anticipate happening when we put one of the new meters in that measures more accurately? Then their meter obviously is not going to be working at 100% efficiency any longer. And so, so yes, there's going to be some slippage that'll be picked up, and it's going to be somewhere in the 2 to 8% range in the amount of water volume.
All right, thank you, Councilman Adams.
I had just a little story years ago. I was in a little town. The school superintendent called me and he said, we have a problem. We were watering our practice field and we're watering our football field, and it costs us more money a month to water our practice field than it does our football field, that we keep it pristine, and we'd like you to fix that. So I did some research, and I called him back and said, I got some good news and bad news. The good news is we found the problem. The bad news is you've had a dead meter on your football field for the past couple of years, and so all of that water that they've been using a lot, that's slippage. Yeah, it's water lost. And so we replaced it and said you're probably going to get a little more expensive bill on your football field than your practice, but that happens all the time. If you don't have a plan where you're checking it and maintaining those things, it can be a real problem for the city.
Okay, thank you, sir. We certainly appreciate you.
The other thing I want to tell you, Mayor and Council, is that, again, this is a presentation of what we're doing. Somewhere around Thanksgiving time or right before Thanksgiving, they'll be back where you can approve to go forward with the water project or the other project. So you'll approve it. We'll know exactly what the cost is and what the savings are. But tonight, they're just the presentation they're working on. They'll be back. The big dollars.
All right, thank you. We certainly appreciate that presentation. Okay, at this time, we'll go ahead and close that item on the agenda, and we'll move on to item 5. Item 5 is to consider approval of solid waste collection and disposal rate increase with Republic Services.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, we got a letter. It's in your council packet from Republic. They in the contract they can come and ask for a rate increase for the CPI, average CPI. The first year or two of this contract, they didn't ask for any. Last year, I think they got a little one. They're asking for 4.6% now. I was thinking the CPI is more like 7 or 8%, but they averaged all the things. If you look, they have a consumer price index indicator, and it adds in if you buy a house, if you buy a car, all the things, medical costs. And the average of it is 4.6%. So that's a recommendation. Gene Keenan couldn't be here tonight. Colin said he couldn't be here, but I told him we'd put it on. Whatever you, let me see, what do we have it listed at? Are you going to consider, we'd like you to approve it. We'll put it in the budget and in the fee if you approve this to go in effect October 1st. Yes, I'm good with it. This is one of those things like water and wastewater or sanitation. You wonder which is the best deal in town. You know, you can get up, you got instant clear water, clean water, or the wastewater goes away and we take care of it. You don't have to worry, or your garbage gets hauled away, and it's really the best deals in town. So I think it's a little over $20. Anybody know what it is here? It's $21. I don't know exactly. And so you could do the math, and it's a 79-cent increase.
I want to speak to that too. Being in the real estate business for 38 whatever years, too long. As most people know, there's a huge migration into Texas and East Texas, and I speak to a lot of people in my own personal life and things, and what I hear recurring over and over again, we take it for granted because I've been here, but we do have affordable water and services way more than most any other place in the nation, and some places in Texas. It's still fairly cheap to live here. And I think that speaks to our good management, and I don't mean us, I'm talking about as the good old bootstrapping East Texans. We look for ways to save money, we care for each other, we live in a community that really does that with that way of thinking, and we try not to waste our taxpayers' money. And the downside is that we're drawing a new set of folks that want to leave where they've been and come here. And it's and they say, well, water bill's going up $5, and it is, because with this increase and what the water rates that are gonna, it's gonna go up another, and we still have the cheapest water, even with the increases of almost, and on top of that, our water is delicious. We have some of the best quality water anywhere. Am I telling the truth?
That's right. We're bottling it and sending it to Arkansas.
This is what makes it hard to get anywhere dealing with that. But so again, to the public and to those that are listening and paying attention to us, the price we're paying because we are, and I know, and I hate it too, honey. I'm tighter than Dick's hat band. I'm tighter than the bark on a tree. But things are going up, and we have battled in the city. And I think our staff, I think Ed, I think our city, the men and women that work here do a tremendous job helping us watch our cost. I think they sharpen their pencils every chance. They do without some of the products that they think they need. I'm proud of them. I'm proud of the council. We're not perfect, but I'm telling you, it is. I think we've managed to keep our cost affordable for the consumer, for the customer, the citizen of Mount Pleasant. And I am tight. I am tight as I'm a tightwad, but I also know that sometimes you just got to do it. But again, one of the things that makes us so popular is our cheap water. That's why businesses are flocking here. We want your cheap water and sewer, and we're going, you're about to overwhelm us.
All right. Council, anyone else have any questions, comments? All right, at this time, I'll open the floor for a motion.
I move for the approval of the solid waste collection and disposal rate increase by Republic Services and ISP.
I'll second.
Of a motion made by Councilman Walker, second by Councilman Adams. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Vote is unanimous. We'll now close that item on the agenda. All right, at this time, we'll move on to item 6. Item 6 is to consider award of bid for downtown revitalization program. Ricky.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This project is a part of a community development block grant that we received in 2021. Schaumburg and Polk was selected to engineer the project for us, and so Eric is with SPI, and he's here to talk about their recommendation and answer any questions that you may have.
Good afternoon, City Council, Mayor, Mr. Thatcher. I'm with Schaumburg and Polk. On July 11th, 2023, we opened bids for the downtown revitalization program over there in 4th Street, and we reviewed C.E. Marler and Associates background. We called some references. We called 4, and it is Schaumburg and Polk's recommendation that the city awards the project to C.E. Marler and Associates. The total base bid came out to be $500,073,327. Were there any questions?
If you remember, it was approved 2 years ago, and we started to doing it on our own, and the bid came in. We thought it was going to be like $150,000. The bid came in at $300,000. So we said no. Went out for the grant, got the grant, and then we bid the grant. I remember how many months ago we bid it, and we got no bids on it. And then we bid it again and got, but the costs have just been rising. Now, I think the grant was around 500,000, but our part was 150,000. But we have administrative costs for the grant, and we also have engineering costs. So I think the amount of the money we have to come up with is about $360,000. And we recommend we do it before cost goes up higher, and we tend to utilize the grant. If we don't, we'll have to pay whatever we spend in the grant back. The other thing is we almost, because it was taking so long to get it done, we almost lost this grant. We did lose the ability to apply for another grant this year because this one wasn't started yet or done. So we need to get this one done, and it's really kind of a black eye. If we don't get it done and give it back, it's kind of a black eye in trying to go forward and get other grants on it. So we think we ought to just bite the bullet and do it. It's our recommendation. It's a sidewalk project. It's and street lights. Those lights. It goes from Second Street. It goes from It goes from 3rd Street to 4th Street on Jefferson, and then it goes over one block between Jefferson and Madison on 4th Street, and it's 12 lights, 3 on each side per block, and there's 2 blocks. Then it's sidewalks, and if you remember the sidewalks along 4th Street between Jefferson and Madison, it's quite a high, uneven thing. So they're going to redo all that. We're going to have some guardrails and so forth. It's going to be all done ADA. And so that's a lot of the cost. And a lot of the cost too, Jefferson is in TxDOT highway. And so we have to tear up some of their highway to put the electrical in and so forth.
And that's matching lamp posts to our existing lamp posts along that'll be the same path for like the carriage rides for the Christmas.
That's correct. And then we want to, we'll probably do ourselves, we want to go from Madison down to 2nd Street. We need to go from 2nd on Jefferson 2nd to 3rd Street eventually. And then we also want to go 2nd from Madison to what's the street west of Madison? Van Buren, and Van Buren to Madison on 3rd, and then we'll pretty much have that all done. So can you tell us what parking spaces we've added along the way? It talks about how we're saw cutting and adding parking spaces. Is that a parallel parking? Second page, top in the first paragraph, number 1, reference checks.
Yeah, we're not adding any parking spots. We did add some bump outs to the sidewalks, but that's about it.
Okay, thank you, appreciated that. Okay, council, we have any further questions?
Ed, would you please, I know it has been a while, just like Jerry said, we've already, just to be clear, we've already spent some of these monies, right? Some of the engineering's been done, and if we were to not approve this, we basically would lose all that money.
We'd still have the engineering, but we would lose all the grant money. We'd have to pay that all back, which is $500,000.
But I mean, we've already spent money on engineering. We're out that no matter what we do, correct? I mean, in other words, how much more are we got to spend? How much?
$367,000. Right. And Laurie has that. She did it 4:30 today.
So this 573 is a total impact on us, including what we've already spent.
have any further questions? All right, floor is open for motion.
I move approval of the downtown revitalization, Texas CDBG grant number CDM 21-0477.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we got a motion by Councilman Adams, second by Councilman Chappelle. Madam Secretary, record a vote, please.
Aye.
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 Thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, be safe on the way back there. Okay, this time we'll go ahead and close that item, move on to our next, which is public comments. At this time, the floor is open for public comments. If you wish to address the council, please come up, state your name and address and your concerns to the council. I'm sorry, you have to press that button and hold it down the entire time you talk.
Great evening. My name is Cayman Farmer, and I'm here representing not only Northeast Texas Community College. I'm the director of student development there, but I'm also here representing my wife, Edith Guerrero Farmer, and giving you a refresher of what has happened at Oaklawn Park is some people have came in and voiced their opinions in regards to the usage of the basketball courts there. And so I'm here to voice our opinion on the opposite side. And so my wife, about 2 months ago, she wanted to pursue her passion of dance and create a culture of fitness and camaraderie within the women in the community of Mount Pleasant, Texas. And so she started out over at Dalewood Park, and there wasn't any like shade or anything, like a cover, and so it was like extremely hot, and then whenever it would rain or anything like that, she would have to cancel her classes. And so one of the ladies out of like 30 ladies that she has inside of her class was like, well, why can't we go over to Oaklawn Park? It's not being used. And so they ended up going over to Oaklawn Park for about a few weeks, and then the word got out to some of the citizens. And so I don't really know exactly what happened, but what I did see with my own eyes and what my wife has been voicing to me is harassment. And so whenever there's, let's say there's 6 goals over there at the basketball court, 5 now, one of the main goals is broke. And so they would use half of the court, or really 1/4 of the court, to do their classes, and then they would leave the other sides open to whoever was playing basketball. And to give you a picture, there really wasn't a whole lot of people out there. There's still not a whole lot of people out there playing basketball. And so the whole argument for the other party is that the basketball court should only be used for basketball, which I totally understand where they're coming from, especially if it's being used. But I understand that basketball courts aren't only used for basketball. If that was the case, you wouldn't have volleyball on basketball courts. You wouldn't have indoor football on basketball courts. You wouldn't have these different venues and arenas being used for multiple events. And so my wife was basically wanting me to come up here and just ask, how can we stop the harassment? We've rented out, we've moved away from the basketball court and rented out the pavilion to remove ourselves from any trouble, because we don't want any trouble at all. So we've removed ourselves from that. And now it's like we went to the pavilion and we're still getting this this harassment. And we understand great things come with adversity, but it's not just my wife. She has like 20 plus ladies with them, and then they're bringing their kids as well. And so there's been several occasions where the policemen, the officers had to come up there, and that's not a great look for the culture and the community that she's building within these ladies. And so she's wanted us to come up here and voice our opinion after talking to the city several times, and then the city had gave us information that the opposite party had came up here, and so that's why we was wanting to just come up here and just let you know how we felt, and just we're following the guidelines of renting out the pavilion, and we'll pay it up for a week, pay it up for a month, whatever we have to do. We just need those 3 days a week, and we just need whoever's underneath that pavilion to be aware that we have rented this out, and we don't want any confrontation whenever we do have to get them, not force them, but ask them to be removed because we did rent out their pavilion. And so that's our point of view on that, and our ask is if we can somehow stop the harassment from the people that's inside of the park.
I think it's a good opportunity. Ricky, do you remember I had a conversation with you not too awful long ago, and if this is something that I think would work, but we've talked about the fitness court that Sulphur Springs has, and we've discussed how to utilize the old Delwood swim pool area and things like that. And I know we've got budget coming up, and you know, it might be time to look at that. If you guys have not seen that, you can go online and type in Sulphur Springs Fitness Court. I've mentioned it to Ricky, and we've been talking about it, and you're welcome to look it up as well. But they have a actual fitness court where there's exercise stuff there, and honestly, probably that would be the best way for the city to upgrade another park and have a area specific for exercise and specific for utilizing that, and it would probably alleviate some problems. It'd be something for us to look at for sure. Anyway, this might be something to look at. What do you think about that?
So that's absolutely my thinking also, and I've expressed that to Edith and this gentleman also. Is the next park we're going to is Delwood, and so we do have some funding available, and absolutely we need to come up with a space. They're not the only individuals that have Zumba and other kind of aerobic activities, so absolutely that's on the plan.
And you've probably researched it a lot more than I have. I mean, I've just pulled it up and looked at it and drove over there and looked at it. So, I mean, is there enough room? Of course, you can look at me. You can tell I don't Zumba. I might Zumba while I'm eating a pork rind or something. But is there enough in something like that? Is there a space in that would make that worthwhile? I mean, I know there's stair steps to do stepping and jumping, and there's, you know, stuff to do pull-ups. I couldn't do a pull-up if I wanted to, but anyway, is that something that would accommodate any of the fitness and exercise, and would actually be an area specific for that, and give a space for people to utilize it that way?
No, absolutely. So I already have some workout equipment purchased and on site, and so basically Zumba just needs an open space. It's just basically dance routine, aerobic activities. So I think there's plenty of room over there for us to come up with an area.
I'd like to ask that in the future, when choose a permit for someone to use it, that everybody know what they have. Because some of this confusion, they had the documentation from the city. And if the city had an issue, it should have stopped right there. It should have been brought back to the city, and then we should have taken care of it on the city side. Because once the city issues a permit for something, that's who operates the park. That's what the reason I said last time. These things come under the direction of the city manager, that who operates the day-to-day operations. Because if the city issues someone a permit, that's all a citizen can do is use what they've been given. Is that correct?
Yes, we were given a permit, especially for half of the basketball court, and and we showed the opposite party this permit, gave them the paper, and then they even brought up excuses that we printed that out ourselves and wrote on it ourselves. And then the officer was called up there, and everything was good, and then we were told that we couldn't use the basketball courts anymore, which was fine because we just wanted to rent out the pavilion or rent out some space to where we had no trouble for the instructor and also for the members.
Hey, Ricky, so if we do something at Delwood, do we have the space to do, he mentioned they needed like a covered area to get out of the sun. Could we do something like more modern looking with, I don't know what you call that material, but like instead of doing a metal roof that attracts and absorbs heat, do something that gives a shade but still allows a breeze to come through? Can we do something or look at something like that for them?
You're probably just talking about a typical shade structure like we have at Oaklawn over the splash pad. But we absolutely can look at some canopy structures, yes, sir.
I just think that's the best deal for right now. Let's try to utilize this situation and let's try to, it's something we've looked at and we just haven't been able to get around to it yet. Obviously, we want people in the parks, okay? So we probably need to designate an area for that and we'll start toward that direction. So
as we analyze and we look at the total picture of this thing, before you look at just this specific issue, there will be other issues that in a progressive society that come up that you will want other events that want to use more than on a continuous basis. So if you make these strict restrictions now on this one thing, something else comes up 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, the world is progressive. So if there's something specific to this case, think about the generic ones that are coming in the future.
Mayor and council, that's the main point I wanted to make, and that is, and the other thing is this is a time for the audience to make comments, and we can take the information and then work on it. Now, I don't, Councilman Adams said that we hadn't got around to it, but we've been working on it ever since last council meeting, and I think maybe you guys know it. I know the Johnsons knew it, but Ricky and I have been working on it. We want to make sure that, as Councilman Walker said, that we're going to bring an ordinance with these rules in. This is the way it'll be from now on. But when we do that, we want to make sure we don't create another problem over here, because we got to think about the whole thing. For example, the Baseball Association rents the baseball fields for 9 months to 12 months, and that kind of thing. So we need to make sure whatever we put in there that we can do that. The other thing is we're taking into consideration that this is a class that you charge for, and so you're making money on that at our facilities, and so we've got to consider that maybe where you can get 1 or 2 classes a week, but maybe you can't do it for 6 months or a year. You know, that other people may want to have a birthday party there or something. So everybody should have an opportunity. So Ricky and I are working on that. What we want to be careful that we don't do is in this meeting solve all the problems like we did last time, and as we're trying to do this time. Our budget is really tight this year. I don't anticipate we're going to have any money to build a workout facility in this year's budget kind of thing. So I want to say that. But Ricky and I are working on an ordinance. We've been talking, we will bring it to the council in a workshop kind of thing, go over the ideas and take the ideas and suggestions, and then we'll have it for something we can vote on. But in the meantime, we have an ordinance that we're going by now. And as Ricky told me, most of the time we try to get more people to come use the parks, and don't have the parks for nobody comes to. On the other hand, we did build that basketball a stadium for basketball and for inclement weather and so forth, and so just having somebody's presence in there doing a class will keep people that want to play basketball to come. I know someone said, well, we'll get off if they come, but a lot of them won't come and even ask you. So we want to move other activities, other places, and we do want to keep that new basketball court for basketball only kind of thing. And we've had people with skateboards on there and little scooters, had a car drive on it, all of those wheel kind of activities. It's nice and smooth, but it has caused damage. We have to go back and spend $20,000 to refix the surface. So anyway, we understand the problem, and we're going to work with it, and we will get with you. And in fact, we'd like to get with you and talk about it, other than at a council meeting, and then come back and make some recommendations.
So, Mr. Farmer had initially addressed about harassment. Do we have any suggestions for them, though, to try to minimize that, or what should they do? Because they're gonna continue to get harassed I know they provide it, but the people still come and still harass, so what can we do to try to put a thumb on that?
I think, because I'm not sure of how many people has gotten those phone calls that I get. And I'm sure Ricky does, because I call him when they call me. And I get calls all week long. And as far as the harassment goes, I think it's not people showing up. It's the people out, if you're from the last meeting, a young lady come in, you know, the older people that sits under that pavilion that's been out there playing dominoes, cards, or whatever for the last 10 years. This is new to them. This whole workout thing wasn't happening before. Even before the park was reconstructed, they had been doing this for over 10 years. And from what I'm getting from one side and now from the other side, because they're saying the same thing, you know, of how they're being talked to and what goes on social media. I don't get involved with what goes on social media, but I hear it all. But when you guys were in, I'm going to ask you to do one thing for me. Replace the tables, because you got these people that play under there. Those are a lot of people that are disabled, the upper in age, and when we using the facility, we're going to remove the tables. Let's put them back so that they don't have to, because there's a lot of them with back injuries and this and that. The average person over there is about 60 that's over there playing the cards, dominoes, or whatever it is. And they're calling me complaining. They're not putting the tables back. So it's a lot of back and forth. So to eliminate, to make it easier, I just ask, please put the tables back.
We will make sure that's done. Thank y'all for y'all time and attention.
Ask that you all contact the city at 903-575-4000 and ask what the rules and regulations of whatever the issue is for the city to take care of it. Because we have a parks, this is not something that we've seen very often, but we have a Parks and Rec director. And if there's a violation of the law, we have a police that enforce the law and ordinances of the city. It's not a city. We don't manage that part of it. That is not a city council function. And so if you call up here to alleviate this, call 903-575-4000. The city manager will take care of it, because all of the departments are under his leadership. The police, fire department, park, everything is under his leadership. He'll take care of the issue. It's when you take it and you make it something else. These are city issues for the city manager to direct.
Yes, thank you. And I wanted to also say that we did, you know, the basketball pavilion just was finished just in the last few months, or a month or two. So, and the folks did call up and want to rent it. We hadn't even talked about whether we're going to rent it or not. The ladies that rent other parks, they just took their thing and rented it to them. And then later we've gone back and said we could rent it out, but it's for basketball activities, not for anything else. But I think also when we were there, and I think the mayor was there initially when it happened, and I think it was the mayor that first pointed to the pavilion and said, you can rent that kind of thing. And so that's kind of how you got over there to do that. So we did make a mistake on renting it the first time, and it was a confusing thing. But we're trying to straighten it out, and we'll get it worked out. And one of the things we don't want to do is react, where somebody comes in and says this, so we jump on and make some rules, and then the next meeting we make some more rules. We need to sit down and look at the whole thing and make sure we move together on it. So if you'll just bear with us, we'll get this thing worked out.
All right, thank you, Mr. Foreman. Do we have anyone else at this time that would like to speak on the public comments? All right, we'll close that portion and that item on the agenda, and we'll now move on to our city manager's report.
I want you guys to look, I had park rental written down here. I was gonna kinda just tell everybody we're working on that, so I'll jump over that since we've already done that. And, Laurie, remind me, we're having a budget workshop the 14th, 15th, before the council meeting. We're gonna go to, probably across the street to the library. Is that okay, Helen? The next council meeting, 2 weeks from tonight. No, it's the 14th, 15th, 14th. It's the 15th, isn't it? 15th. And, you're gonna try to get out early, so about 5 o'clock, and we'll go till right at 7, and then we'll walk over here and have the meeting at 7. That'll be all right for everybody. That's what we talked about last time.
I'm good with it. Councilman Adams, Councilman Wall. You guys good?
That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thatcher. We appreciate you. Okay, we'll go ahead and close that item on the agenda, and we'll now move on to our executive session. Pursuant to Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551, Texas Government Code, the City Council will recess into executive session to discuss the following. Real property, discuss purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. Also, real property, discuss purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property in consultation with legal counsel regarding the purchase or value of real property for Mount Pleasant West Loop Collection System Improvements Project. At this time, the council is in executive session. All right, the time is now 8:57 p.m. In accordance with Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, the City Council is reconvening back to our regular session. There is no action taken in executive session. At this time, we are adjourned.
Mayor and council, I need to say that